If you're not yet a subscriber, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and also the little bell icon so you can be alerted each and every time we make a new video. Hi everybody, Ira Miller here with Homes Around the Village's YouTube channel, and welcome to part 3 of our Florida real estate contract series, explaining to you all the details of a Florida residential contract for sale and purchase, also known as a FAR/BAR contract. So FAR, Florida Association of Realtors, is what FAR stands for. BAR stands for the Florida Bar, or the legal lawyers that got involved with helping the Florida Association of Realtors put together this 14-page FAR/BAR contract. Now, as we've mentioned before in the other two parts, you have the residential contract for sale and purchase, and you also have the as-is contract for sale and purchase. So we're basically concentrating on the residential contract for sale and purchase, because it is a little more detailed, it is a little more in depth. I did do a video for the differences between an as-is and a standard, which is what I like to call the residential contract for sale and purchase. I call it the standard contract versus the as-is contract, so just for simplicity purposes. All right, before we get started, I want to go ahead and do a little disclaimer for you. I want to talk about that I am not an attorney. I am not allowed to practice law. I am a Florida real estate broker, and I'm merely interpreting this contract for you that we use to make an offer on a home. So this is not to be misconstrued as legal advice. I'm not giving legal advice. I am merely interpreting this contract for you as it reads and explaining it to you as we go, okay? Part 2 is for financing. Now we're going to go into buyer's closing costs. So let's go ahead and proceed down to closing costs, fees, and charges, Chapter 9. And look, if you want a blank copy of this, we'd be happy to provide it for you. We'll email it to you. So we're on page 3. Bottom of page 3. Closing costs, title insurance, survey, home warranty, special assessments, costs to be paid by the seller. So what I'll tell you is the bulk of the closing costs. Buyers always ask me, how much are my closing costs? Your closing cost, if you're paying cash, is going to be under $1,000, including your home inspection. Okay. So you can rest assured that you're less than $1,000. Now, if you are getting a mortgage, if you're getting a loan, your lender is going to charge you a whole bunch of closing costs, but those are not the closing costs that I'm talking about for cash buyers. So just beware, you're going to have about $6,000 or $7,000 in closing costs to your lender if you go ahead and get a mortgage. But for all practical purposes, you don't have many closing costs if you're paying cash. But anyways, let's start with the cost to be paid by the seller. So the documentary stamps. What are doc stamps? Doc stamps is a fee charged by the state of Florida. Florida charges $7 for every $1,000 that you sell your home for. So for instance, for $100,000 of sale price, you'll give the state of Florida $700. If your property's worth $200,000, you'll give them $1,400. If your property's worth $300,000, you'll give the state of Florida $2,100. That's kind of what documentary stamps are, and that's why they are. This takes the place of having a state income tax. So that's why Florida does not have a state income tax, because we have the bulk of our budget comes from these documentary stamp taxes. Okay, moving on. Owner's policy and charges, if paragraph C1 is checked, so paragraph C1, ABC 1 is checked. Seller shall designate closing agent and pay for owner's policies and charges, and I'll tell you what those are right up here in just a second. So owner's titles, policy, and charges, we'll talk about that again. I'll give you the definition. Title search charges, this is what the title company charges you to do a title search and a municipal lien search. I'll give you those definitions as well down below. Charges for FIRPTA. FIRPTA is Foreign Investment Real Estate Property Tax. Let me just say, and I think I've already told you this in prior videos, part 1 or part 2. A lot of redundancy in this contract. A lot of redundancy. So FIRPTA, this is the first time we've seen FIRPTA about foreign investors who buy, foreigners who are not U.S. citizens who buy property in the United States. If they go to sell a property, there's all kind of legalities associated with that. We're going to see that again in this contract, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Okay? HOA and Condominium Association estoppel fees. What are estoppel fees? An estoppel fee is what the title company will be charged by the HOA, Homeowners Association, or your condominium association to do a search on that particular home or condo or whatever to make sure there's no outstanding liens or fees owed. And then an estoppel letter will be produced from that search, sent to the title company, so the title company could either add that to the closing document to make sure all those fees are paid, but that's why an estoppel letter is sent out to these entities. So now you know what an estoppel letter is. Recording and other fees needed to cure title. So if there are clouds on the title, if there are liens on the title, if there are blemishes on the title, all that stuff's going to have to be cured before closing. So and for all practical purposes, we're talking about you, the buyer. You know, this contract is generated by the buyer, so that's why we're talking about this from the buyer's point of view, from the buyer's standpoint. Okay, so that's how I'm going to be doing this whole series, is as you, the buyer. Okay. So if there's anything needed to cure the title, to get these liens taken care of and all that, those will be charged by the title company. If there's any attorney fees, if the seller elects to have an attorney, those are part of their cost to be paid by the seller. And then there could be other fees. Say for instance, I'm gonna just say this. I've been seeing more and more sellers giving 1% commission to real estate agents. Let me tell you something. I employ 2 assistants. My time and expertise is worth a lot of money. And so my time is worth a lot more than just the 1%. So I might come along and charge this seller another extra percent or 1.5%, because typical commissions are 2.5% to 3%. You know, so I might just go ahead and write in here 1.5% more in commission to buyer's agent. That's just an example off the top of my head. I mean, I don't do that. I mean, I haven't done it yet, but I've thought about, this is where I would add my commission, and if it ever came down to that. Also, I feel like that selling agent's probably charging 4%, and they're probably getting 3% and giving 1% to the buyer's agent. You know, so that's unacceptable. So this is where I kind of, you know, put them on notice that they need to come up with some more money and be more fair to the buyer's agent. This has to do with paragraph 12. Paragraph 12, property inspection and repair. So this talks about repair limits. All right, here's what I'm going to tell you. The default, if left blank, is 1.5% of the purchase price. I know we're using a $475,000 home. In our example, let's say it's a $300,000 home. If it's a $300,000 home, then $4,500 would be required in repairs if needed, in not only the general repair items, but also WDO and permits. So general repair items is when a home inspector goes in and inspects the home, looks to see if there's anything that is not in working condition. We're going to go in more detail in that when we get down to paragraph 12. Same with WDO, wood destroying organisms. Used to be called termite treatment and repairs. Now it's called WDO because they've extended that to wood rot, mold, ants, stuff like that. And then $2,000, I've limited it to $2,000 for each. So $2,000 in general repairs, $2,000 in WDO repairs, and $2,000 if costs associated with closing out or expired permits and obtaining required building permits for any existing improvement for which a permit was not obtained. So if a seller has put an addition on their home and not got the necessary permits, now they're going to have to go to that building department, beg for mercy. And they're going to charge them all kind of fees for that. All right, paragraph 11 has maintenance requirement. What is maintenance requirement? Maintenance requirement says they have to maintain the property once we, except for ordinary wear and tear and casualty loss and those repairs, replacements, or retreatments required to be made by this contract, sellers shall maintain the property, including but not limited to lawn, shrubbery, and pool in the condition existing as of the effective date, called maintenance requirement, okay? And then it refers you back up to 9A. What does that mean? That means at the time that you saw this property, the seller is required to maintain that property in the condition that you saw it when we entered into a contract and then it became an effective contract. If prior to closing, seller is unable to meet the repair requirement we just talked about in paragraph 12, or the repairs, replacements, treatments, or permitting as required by paragraph 12, then sums equal to 125% of the estimated cost to complete the applicable items, but not in excess of the general repair WDO and permits, which is $2,000, shall be escrowed at closing. So if they haven't mowed the lawn, say, and you want them to mow the lawn because they're supposed to have kept it in that condition, we might hold back $100 to get them to bring in a lawn maintenance people to do that. If they haven't done any repairs that are necessary repairs that they were supposed to have done and agreed to do, then we're going to have to hold back 125% of the estimated cost to complete those repairs. All right. So moving on, if actual costs of maintenance requirement or require repairs, treatment or permitting exceed this amount, $2,000, seller shall pay such actual costs. So this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If actual costs of the maintenance requirement or required repairs, replacements, treatment, or permitting exceed the applicable escrowed amounts, so the 125%. So let's say it was only $1,000 and they made them put in $1,250. Then and it exceeded that, they'll pay the actual costs. They'll go ahead, but not exceed the $2,000 that we set up here. And then And then any unused portion of the escrow amount shall be returned to the seller. All right, let's talk about this right here. $2,000, right? You might ask me, well, why are you going to put $2,000 instead of the 1.5, which is typical and is the default amount? Here's why I might even put $1,000 in. The seller might even come back and say, hey, I'm only going to pay up to $500 in repairs. If you want to enter into a contract with me, we're changing this to $500, which is stupid, and I'm going to tell you why. I like to try to make it attractive as possible to the seller, and by saying we're not going to ask for the whole 1.5%, which for a $300,000 home is $4,500. We're only asking for $2,000. And why do I do that? Why do you as the buyer say, why are you going to risk me by only putting $2,000 in there? You know, what happens if the repair cost, the termite damage, the permitting goes over $2,000? You know, I don't want to just limit them to that because I don't want to be on the hook for that as the buyer. Trust me, you are safe, you are covered, and I'm going to show you why. We're going to go down here real quick, and this will help me when I get down to here. But in paragraph 12, property inspection and repair, we're going to go on down to this paragraph right here. If cost to repair general repair items equals or is less than the general repair limit, $2,000, seller shall have the repairs made in accordance with paragraph 12F, and these are just the standards. The F are repair standards in good workmanlike condition. Seller shall have the repairs made in accordance with paragraph 12F. If cost to repair general repair items exceeds the general repair limit, and again, I'm going to say $2,000, and again, I'm going to say sometimes sellers will come back to me and say, we're limiting our repair cost to $500. And I say that's dumb, and here's why. Then within the next 5 days after a party's receipt, so it could be the seller, it could be the buyer, it could be both, getting estimates, the seller may pay the excess by delivering written notice to the buyer. And an email suffices. Dear Mr. Buyer, we see that it's going to cost us $3,000 to fix everything. We're willing to go ahead and pay the $3,000. In writing, they tell you that as an example. Or buyer may deliver written notice to the seller designating which repairs of the general repair items seller wishes to make, or the buyer wishes the seller to make, at a cost not to exceed the $2,000 general repair limit. So you may, as the buyer, say, you know what, I don't care if they fix this, this, or this, just make sure they fix this and that, and as long as it doesn't exceed the $2,000, we're good, we're gonna move forward. We're giving them a written notice. We wanna go ahead and have these things fixed, and we don't care about these other things. All right, and agreeing to accept the balance of their general repair items in their as-is condition, subject to the seller's continuing, remember the maintenance requirement, maintaining the property in the condition in which we saw it at the time we made the offer and entered into a contract, making it an effective contract. However, if neither party delivers such written notice to the other, so the seller doesn't write you, the buyer, saying they're willing to pay the excess. You, the buyer, doesn't write the seller and say, hey, I only want you to fix this, this, and this, and not the other things. If neither party does that, then either party may terminate this contract. All right, and what happens to the deposit? All right, read on. And buyer shall be refunded the deposit, thereby releasing buyer and seller from all further obligations under this contract. All right, folks, I cannot tell you how many real estate agents don't know about that paragraph. I cannot tell you how many sellers agents come to me and say, hey, my buyers want to limit the repair cost to $500. And I say, why? That's stupid. That's crazy. Because if repairs are over that, you're telling me that they're not going to make any repairs over $500 and blow up this contract? Why would they want to do that, right? What if there's $1,000 and they refuse to pay the extra $500, as we saw? We can just cancel the contract and get our deposit back and say, see you later, So that's dumb. But I see it time and time again. But anyways, just know you're protected under that paragraph that I just read to you. All right, we'll see that again when we get back down there. But a little redundancy on my part, I guess, then. But anyways, you're covered as far as the $2,000 for WDO. You're covered for $2,000. If anything goes over any of these and the seller doesn't agree to make the extra costs for repair or permits or whatever, then guess what? You can cancel the contract and get your deposit back. So all buyers ask me, what are my closing costs? All right, so here is what your closing costs are. Your closing costs are taxes, prorated taxes. Now I'm going to tell you, more times than not, if we're closing before October, you're going to get a credit from the seller. The seller is going to give you a credit for the amount of time they've owned the home in taxes. It's going to be prorated. They're going to give it to you. You'll get the tax bill at the end of the year, and then you'll pay the tax bill with those prorated credits that you're going to get. All right, so that's more of a credit than a cost, as it says up here. Recording fees on notes and mortgages. So if you're getting a mortgage, then these are the bulk of your closing costs down here. If you're paying cash, you have very few other closing costs. Recording fees, to put the deed in your name, that's probably $50. Owner's policy and charges, we're going to, again, we saw that up here. Owner's policy and charges, we're going to give you the definition of that in just a second. Okay, so financial statements, that's only if you're getting a mortgage. Owner's policy, we just talked about. Survey. Now, if we're in a master plan community, I usually just say, save the money. It's about $500 to $600 for a survey today. And if you're in a master plan community, then chances are whoever was the developer has already done all the surveying. The only time you might want to think about getting a survey is if your neighbor has a fence or your neighbors have a fence, and you want to make sure it's not on your property. You might want to go ahead and get a survey. Not only that, but I will tell you, if you don't get a survey, then that survey is not going to be added to your title insurance policy, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. So lender's title policy and endorsement. So you will be paying your lender title insurance. You'll have to buy your lender title insurance just like the seller has to buy you title insurance. That's what, that falls under owner's policy. All right. HOA and condominium association applications and transfer fees. Well, if you're in an HOA, yeah, you might have to pay those. Municipal lien search, we're going to see that down here, right here. Loan expenses, appraisal fees, buyer's inspections. You're going to want to do a buyer inspection. You're going to want to do a home inspection. Always you're going to want to do a home inspection when you buy a home. I advocate for home inspections. They're worth whatever it is that you pay, and for peace of mind, and also to get, there's always stuff that needs to be repaired in a home. Your attorney fees, all related insurance, so homeowner's insurance, title policy premium, or owner's policy premium. Only if 9C3 is checked. 9C3 is down here, the Miami-Dade. We're not in Miami-Dade, so we're not going to talk about that. Title evidence and insurance. At least 15 days, or if paragraph 8A is checked, that means you're paying cash, then 5 days. Prior to the closing date, which is title evidence deadline. A title insurance commitment. Title commitment is issued by a Florida licensed title insurer, and legible copies of instruments listed as exceptions attached thereto, which is title commitment. And after closing, an owner's policy of title insurance, and see standard A for terms. So standard A is down here in paragraph 18, I think it is. Yeah, here's your standards. Title evidence restrictions. Remember I told you there's a bunch of redundancy in this. So this talks about what a title commitment is. So we're going to get to that eventually. So shall be obtained and delivered to the buyer. So an owner's policy of title insurance. You're going to get title insurance. This protects you. So they're going to do, the title company is going to do a title search. They're going to do municipal lien search, make sure there's no liens on the property. If they happen to miss something, you're safe, you're protected with title insurance. So an owner's title policy shall be obtained and delivered to the buyer. Here's something of importance I will tell you right here. This is, nobody, hardly anybody knows about this. I was told by an attorney. Now again, I'm not practicing law, I'm just relaying the information I was told by an attorney. Here, if seller has an owner's policy of title insurance, which everybody has title insurance. Everybody gets title insurance when they buy a home. I don't care how old it is. They've gotten. Now, do they know what the policy is? Do they have the policy? Probably not, right? So they're probably never going to do this. But if the seller has an owner's policy of title insurance covering the real property, right? Then the seller shall furnish a copy to the buyer and closing agent within 5 days after the effective date. Again, what is the effective date? The effective date is the time that the contract has been signed and initialed and is completed and it's agreed upon by both parties. That's the effective date when the last initial, last signature was put on this contract. Seller has 5 days to get that owner policy into you, the buyer, and the title company. I, again, had an attorney tell me that because at one time I had somebody who was desperate. I can't remember why, but they were desperate to cancel this contract. And they had a real need to cancel the contract, and then the lawyer said, well, did the seller produce the owner's policy of title insurance within 5 days of the effective date? I said, no. I mean, I'm just as guilty of not getting that done. Well, they can go ahead and cancel this contract because they didn't do what the contract said they had to do. They violated this contract just based on this one line right here. So, just by watching this video, you've learned something that do not make sure, we need to make sure that all items and terms of this contract are adhered to. That's one buried into this contract that nobody ever does. I can tell you that right now. So, the owner's title policy premium, title search, and closing services collectively are the owner's policy and charges. So remember I told you owner's policy and charges, owner's policy and charges up here. What are those? I told you we were going to go ahead and get the definition. Here's the definition. The owner's title policy premium, title search and closing services, those are the owner's policy and charges, shall be paid as set forth below. The title insurance premium charges for the owner's policy and any lender's policy will be calculated and allocated in accordance with the Florida law. That's why they can't gouge. You know, they're all title companies are pretty close to the same as far as these title insurance premium charges because of that, but may be reported differently on certain federally mandated closing disclosures and other closing documents. For the purposes of this contract, municipal lien search means a search of records necessary for the owner's policy of title insurance to be issued without exception for unrecorded liens imposed pursuant to chapters 153, 159, and 170 of the Florida statutes in favor of any governmental body, authority, or agency. Pretty boring, right? All right. Almost 99% of the time, I would say I check this box where the seller shall designate the closing agent and pay for the owner's policies and charges, and buyer shall pay the premium for the buyer's lender's policy, because while the seller has to give you title insurance, you have to give your lender title insurance to protect your lender from any liens that might be missed on that home. And then endorsements and closing, loan closing, which amounts shall be paid by buyer to closing agent or other such provider. Now, you do as the buyer have the rights to go ahead and designate your own closing agent. I know some people who have an attorney that's taking care of their estate, and this home is in their estate, and this home they're selling their home out of their estate. Well, they might have their attorney go ahead and do the closing for them. And in this case, you'll have to pay for your own title policy. We're not in Miami-Dade, so I'm not really going to be concerned with this provision up here, because if you are watching this video from Miami-Dade, then you're going to go ahead and just read this. You can pause the video right now and read this right here. Survey, redundancy, again, at least 5 days prior to the closing date, the buyer may, at buyer's expense, have the real property surveyed and certified by a registered Florida surveyor. If seller has a survey covering the real property, okay, remember this now. If seller has a survey covering the real property, a copy shall be furnished to the buyer and closing agent within 5 days after effective date. That's just like the title policy. Home warranty. I know that I kind of did a video about home warranties. I kind of basically said they weren't the paper they were written on. I was pretty mad at the warranty company, but they do have their place. So I'll be honest with you. I did, when I paid for a homeowner home warranty for years and years and years, right? And then it's just like any insurance you pay for years and years and years. When it comes time to pay out, they don't want to pay out. But the home warranty company I used did pay for a new microwave in my home. They did do a lot of repairs to my air conditioner. This was all covered under the policy. I didn't have to pay a dime out of pocket because I had the gold policy. But where it came to where they said they were going to replace the item if they couldn't repair it, that's when, everything went to hell in a handbag. And they tried to gouge me. They tried to charge me $3,000. They were going to give me the cheapest item that you could possibly find on the market. And that's when I drew the line with home warranties. But hey, if we're buying a home that has older appliances, older air conditioner, older water heater, or whatever, it might behoove us to go ahead and consider doing a home warranty. Okay? Special assessments. All right, I used to think this was for the villages. This was for the bond. It is not. This really has to do with one thing, and that's a public body. Does not include a condo or homeowners association, and does not apply, right down here, does not apply to a special benefit tax lien imposed by a community development district or a CDD. So I used to check this box to say, okay, well, if it says that this talks about the seller will pay installments due prior to closing on the bond, and then the buyer shall pay installments due after closing on the bond, and that's really not what this is actually for. Okay. This paragraph 9F shall not apply to a special tax benefit. I'll say it again. Imposed by a community development district. This is 9F, what we're talking about. It's only for a public body. What does that mean? It means that the city comes along and repaves the street out in front of your house because that street is all tore up and decrepit. And they come in and put a nice new road in front of your house. It kind of increases the value of your house. They impose an assessment on your lot or on your property, on your home, then that's when this takes effect. And so if the person who owns the home is paying, well, first of all, let me just read this. At closing, the seller shall pay the full amount of the liens imposed by a public body. Public body does not include a condominium or homeowners association, that are certified, confirmed, and ratified before closing. So they might not have even done the work, but the city's already assessed a lien, before they even did the work. Well, the seller has to pay for that, okay, if we put seller shall pay. Before closing. And number 2, the amount of the public body's most recent estimate or assessment for an improvement which is substantially complete as the effective date. So they've already basically done the work, but it's not resulted in a lien yet being imposed by the property before closing. Buyer shall pay, so the seller shall pay that too. Even if they haven't resulted in a lien yet, they're still going to have to find out what the cost is, and then they're going to pay that. Buyers shall pay all other assessments. If special assessments may be paid in installments. Now, these boxes only are for the mention of installments. If there's one lump sum, they have to pay it before or after the work is done. If there are installments, then this is where we go into seller shall pay the installments due prior to closing, and then buyer shall pay installments due after closing, or the buyer shall pay in full prior to or at the time of closing any assessment allowed by a public body. Okay, so this is where we want, even if there's installments, we want them to pay it off. That is page 4. We are going into disclosures. We are 41 minutes into this video. So we're going to stop here. That's enough in itself, what I just went through. A lot of important information. You can see the importance of knowing your contract, knowing what's in the contract. You can rest assured I know everything that's in this contract, and that's why I'm going through and I am just reading over the contract for you and explaining it to you. All right, and so that's part 3 of this contract. We're only on page 4. So we're going to try to keep moving through these and so give you a detailed information. So if you ever wonder what's in this contract, all you have to do is go back to my videos and watch these in installments, and then you'll see I'll explain it all to you. Or just rest assured, I know what's in these contracts. But a lot of times when I'm writing out a contract, I've got to go through the whole contract. I've already done a whole video about what I go through. I kind of ad-lib through it. I'm not in detail like I am here in this series of contract videos, but this is very important. I don't know anywhere out there where you can get this kind of information, so I just want to do that for you. All right, so as always, if you're not yet a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. If you will hit the little notification icon as well, then you'll be notified when the next part 4 video comes up and other subsequent videos come up. you'll be notified. And we would love to have your comments below here. Feel free to add your comments, questions. You could always email us at homesaroundthevillages@gmail.com. You can call or text 352-204-9026. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, but hopefully I've taken the time and I've answered and explained all these in detail. So there you go. So that's it. We will see you in our next video, okay?